Welcome, everyone. So I'm really excited to be presenting today on this topic of content moderation solutions built with AI. Clarifies just had a lot of practical experience in this particular domain, and we're excited about being able to share our knowledge with you. It can be a challenging topic for many reasons to get right and to work on. And we're hoping that by sharing our wisdom, we can help you be effective and successful efficiently with building your own content moderation solutions. So I am Jeff Toffoli. I am Clarify's product marketing manager. And joining me today is Kirk DeBates, one of Clarify's senior solution engineers. And we're going to be walking you through some content moderation essentials. And so we're going to be starting today's presentation with a bit of an overview. We want to make sure that we provide some context for what content moderation is and why it matters. We are going to dispel some misconceptions about content moderation. It's about more than just moderating nudity, and we'll show you some of the nuanced different forms that content moderation can take. We're going to get clear about some of the challenges faced when building a content moderation solution so you can address these kind of issues head on. And then we're going to dive into successful content moderation strategies. And then I'll hand the screen over to Kirk to walk you through a how-to demo, just so you can see how these kind of solutions are built. All right, so just to dive in, what is content moderation? And content moderation is about filtering, as you can see in this image on the right-hand side, where they are making the world's most nuclear-powered cup of coffee. It's a filtering process. So it's about reviewing user-generated content, UGC as it's often called, and the effort there is to remove offensive, inappropriate, and harmful content before it reaches people online. Content moderation is the filtering of this UGC according to pre-established set of rules, and you'll see how important understanding that aspect of the project is, the understanding that setting these rules. And these rules, known as ground truth, to help us determine whether content is appropriate for posting to a platform or website. And why is content moderation important? Well, it's key to provide a safe environment for users and brands for a number of reasons, and there are a number of risks that we take when we're allowing users to post their own content to our platforms. Being able to reduce the risk of users viewing offensive or upsetting content is a key objective of content moderation. Protecting marketplace users from fraudulent sellers or abusive reviews is another common objective. And then also maintaining branding, copyright, and asset quality standards is one that we see pretty commonly out in the field that people are trying to accomplish with content moderation. And we'll take a look at an example of that here in a moment. What industries need content moderation? Well, the truth is that just about everybody these days. User-generated content has proven to be an extremely effective means for marketing and selling products and getting people together. It is the modern equivalent of the word-of-mouth form of marketing, where people tend to trust the opinions of consumers, of buyers, more than they do the opinions of the business people running the business. For obvious reasons, there's perhaps a conflict of interest there, where a business would always want to present itself favorably, but consumers think that if other consumers are providing reviews and commentary, that it's trustworthy because it comes from a different set of motivations. But in particular, we see this common in e-commerce marketplaces, social media, entertainment, travel, and hospitality, photo sharing and crowdsourcing sites, dating sites, sharing economy sites, communities and forums, and gaming. But if you don't see your particular industry listed here, don't be surprised. Content moderation plays a huge role in a lot of different areas. So now let's dive in and take a little bit of a closer look at this user-generated content to give ourselves a clearer sense of what we're dealing with, what the nature of this project is. For today's purposes, we're primarily going to be looking at visual content. I will just preface our talk with that, so primarily images, but user-generated content can come in any form, such as images, videos, text, and audio posted by users on online platforms. Clarify comes equipped to help you with moderating all of these different forms of data. But yeah, so anytime you're going to be opening up an online platform to user-generated content, this could, users just can post anything, and this makes content moderation an absolute necessity for what I hope are just obvious reasons. Everybody's familiar with the wild world of the internet and all of the varied things that get sent around on the internet. So, what does user-generated content look like? So let's just take a look here to get an intuitive sense of the nature of the problem at hand. So, on the left-hand side, we have several examples of user-generated images, and on the right-hand side, we have several examples of publisher-generated images. And I hope that just by taking a glance at these two images, you can get a good gut instinct for the fact that there is a difference in the way that these images look, and that these user-generated content versus company-produced content are going to have different attributes. So these are different data sets, as it were. And so understanding that right up front will be one of the keys to having a successful approach when you're trying to solve this problem. Some additional details that we notice about user-generated content that may come in handy. User-generated content images tend to have distinct, easy to recognize appearance as a result of being created with smartphones. So the vast majority of user-generated images are created with smartphones. Some of these attributes include common smartphone aspect ratios, so it's sort of that long-looking phone image, a deep depth of field, which is to say, unlike the image on the right-hand side where the phone is in focus and everything in the background is out of focus, the tiny lenses used on cell phones tend to give you a deep depth of field so that the things in the back will be in focus and the subject in the front will be in focus. We tend to see a lot of vertical compositions due to just the user interface on a cell phone. It tends to be easier for people to click a photo when a phone is held upright. And we see all kinds of crazy lighting sources and blurriness and underexposure and overexposure that just have to do with sort of the casual nature of a lot of these images. The subject in the photo may be out of focus or not even central to the composition in user-generated content. And again, this is due to maybe lack of professionalism. And basically, everything that professional photography is not is what you see in user-generated images. User-generated content moderation is about more than just moderating images of nudity, and so let's just dispel some of the misconceptions that people have about content moderation, and now just get a sense of really how nuanced of a project this can be, and about all the surprising needs that individual businesses have when it comes to moderating content. Here's an example of a vendor that we work with out of Turkey, Letgo, and they have a secondhand marketplace, not unlike, say, Craigslist or something like that in the United States. And we work with them on moderating inappropriate content, much like nudity and other issues like that. But there's a specific particular issue in Turkey where they tightly regulate the trade of honey. So we had to extend their moderation solution with this ability to recognize honey. And you see various examples of honey images that have been moderated. Open Table, another example of a moderation solution that had to do with a need for a certain level of image quality. And we see this having to do with images that are blurry and out of focus and pixelated and underexposed. And this is what OpenTable was working on, but this also has to do with all kinds of brand management objectives. So sometimes brands will be trying to moderate old versions of logos, recalled versions of products is a very common one, etc. So this is another form of moderation, and this would extend past the usual categories of offensive material, violent material, and this kind of thing. Wattpad is another case where they had sort of unique need. Wattpad is a publisher, and they have this whole specialization of publishing books that have these illustrated book covers, and being able to moderate these particular types of images that have their own particular attributes presented its own unique problems, and we helped them to create a custom solution that could identify inappropriate images in an illustration style. So let's dig into some of the challenges that you may inevitably run up against when developing your own moderation solution. To begin with, and perhaps the most important challenge, the most important thing to get right, is addressing the varying definitions of ground truth. So each business has a slightly different definition of the categories that they want to moderate. And image classification, for example, there's a popular GARM standard that's used in the advertising industry, which considers images of self-harm to qualify in the crime category. And because of the nature of the way we have pre-existing models configured, we would typically categorize those images as gore, injury, or death. When modeling text classification, so this is the ability to categorize passages of text. We run up against social issues that are under active debate in society and academia and amongst everyone, and they lead to varying definitions on subjects like bullying and hate speech. So there's an additional layer of complication because the intention can be misunderstood in those cases. Another enormous issue with content moderation is that the default way to approach moderating content is to have human beings moderate the content manually. This is, you're going to have someone sitting at a computer manually reviewing images one by one, and this can have a horrific impact on individuals. I hope you get a sense now of just how bad this imagery is here on the right-hand side. Try to blur it out so it wasn't true traumatic to anybody on the webinar here, but it really can be pretty horrible out there. So this is a serious consideration. The people working with this kind of data are exposed to extreme, horrific, explicit content. And this can result in traumatic stress and mental burnout. And so we would need to make every effort possible to keep exposure to this kind of material to an absolute minimum. So this is an essential perennial problem in content moderation. And then shifting gears, just looking at the scale of the problem, the internet is producing 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. And at the end of the day, the manual approach to content moderation just doesn't scale up. And you may have experienced this yourself, where you're just unable to keep up with the volume of content that needs to be moderated on your platform. And this is where AI steps in, because an AI model can recognize the patterns in an image. And here's a nice benign example for us to take a look at. You feed in an image, you feed in just one image to a computer, and a computer can count the pixels. It can say, oh, we've got 12,000 red pixels and 15,000 gray pixels, etc. And then you feed in more and more images, and computers are just fantastic about counting things up and looking for patterns in data. And this is kind of what AI is all about. And once you provide enough examples to a computer, it can then you can then present a new example to the computer, and they can say, based on what it's seen before, that this new example is likely an example of a truck or a person on a bike. So this is the nature of the visual recognition aspect of AI. And since it's computer powered, you can scale this up to any size. Once this model is created, you can run essentially any amount of data through it. The computer never gets traumatized. It could care less about pixels. It has no emotional attachment to the images that you're sending to it, or emotional response to the images that you're sending to it. And so AI becomes a very useful tool for this kind of problem. It scales up and it's never traumatized. In creating these AI models, there are some additional challenges to consider. First of all, you're going to run up against cultural context and language semantics that vary regionally. So varying regulatory guidelines, cultural norms, language semantics require a localized approach to content moderation. User habits of types of online communications vary. And when translating text around sensitive cultural issues, there tends to be a lot of confusion around colloquialisms, slang, abbreviations, and et cetera. So this can be a common set of challenges. Additionally, there can be issues of bias in data. So a lot of times this is just unintentional bias in data because there's not enough variance within each concept, which is to say, as you're feeding in examples to the computer for it to learn from, for it to look for patterns in, you might just not be giving it enough variety of the type of images you need to look for. And one real world example that we've run up against is that it is easy to find images of models in underwear, but finding images of real people in underwear with varying skin tones and body types and varying types of underwear can be very difficult. It's very difficult to source that kind of data, and this can result in models having a harder time recognizing these underrepresented skin tones and body types. Data availability in general is a big challenge. Some concepts within the sphere of moderation can just be hard to find data for, and open source data sets for moderation, because of the sensitive nature of a lot of these topics, are extremely rare. Bias in labeling. So if we just switch back to this image here, we see these squares around each of the objects with a label on them. So as you're teaching the computer how to recognize patterns, you need to be labeling the data, saying, this is a truck, this is a bike, this is a person. There can be issues of bias when applying these labels. So expert labelers like data strategists who are employed at Clarify, they make a conscious commitment to being independent and unbiased when labeling, but one would have little control over the conduct of outsourced remote labelers. So this actually can be a big challenge, and needs to be something taken into consideration as you plan your solution. Labeling the data itself is a big challenge, and again, there will be just times when labeling tasks are very complex and require labelers to be thoroughly trained. Computer vision AI is very common in radiology and medical diagnostics these days, and the people labeling those images need to be medical professionals. So they have to understand a certain definition, and there may be social context that also plays into labeling issues. And so this can be in contrast to simpler labeling tasks, which are also an important part of model building and content moderation. So sometimes you will run against just the complexity and the level of expertise required by labelers. And then many labeling companies just won't take on certain moderation labeling tasks because of the trauma to their personnel. And and labeling tasks cannot even get started until thorough criteria have been created to guide your labelers. An additional issue you're going to probably run up against is model drift. So there's no moderation solution that is static. Models will eventually need updating to reflect changes in the world. And so it's sort of an ongoing project of improving models over time and adding new data to your model. And people will often try their hardest to continue posting inappropriate content while evading the flagging mechanisms that machine learning systems are using. So attention to model drift is a problem to look out for. So there are some of the problems. How do we address these problems? What are some successful content moderation strategies? Well, here's a page that just shows some victories. These are some recent moderated images from one of our customers, and no person had to look at any of these images. They were just automatically moderated, and you can see most of it's just kind of garbage. You know, who would have thought people are taking pictures of ashtrays at all, let alone so many of them? This was able to be immediately expunged from their platform so that people could continue posting actual valuable content to their platform, and it wasn't flooded with unhelpful stuff like this. And so to get there, to produce a successful automated solution, you've got to get clear about your ground truth. So before you can begin building and training of your models, you're going to want to work with somebody who can help you define your ground truth and to ensure that there's a mutual understanding between when choosing or labeling training data for a concept. And this, to be clear, this isn't really about defining what the meaning of a concept is. This is about how a concept appears in the worldview of our models. So specifically for an image recognition model, this is about what do examples of a given type look like. And this is about sort of a data set that you're providing to your system, saying everyone agrees that this is the ground truth for what a crystal ball looks like, for example. And getting clear about ground truth upfront in these projects is absolutely essential, as it makes less room for subjectivity and will lead to more accurately labeled data sets and more accurate models in the end. Here is a look at the basic architecture of what your moderation solution will look like. And there might be a lot of things to look at here, but there's really just 4 steps that we're looking at. So here on the left-hand side, we've got user-generated content coming from the world of marketplaces, forums, social media, and dating apps. And out of these various platforms, we're getting files, right? So files in the forms of images, videos, text, and audio. Each of these files is passed as an input into a moderation model, and then the moderation model as an output gives you your file back with a tag. And that tag might be something like toxic or offensive or safe. Once your files are tagged, then you're going to set your business rules in motion. And the most basic thing to do would be to approve, you probably want this, you approve the safe files and remove the unsafe files. That is the most basic thing you could do. But realistically, what you'd probably want to do is be sending some of these rejected, these removals to human reviewers. And it's important to have a platform that can handle data in this way and allow labels to be reviewed. And so that's something that the Clarify platform allows for, the review of labeled data. So we make that easy to happen at scale. Another key to a successful content moderation program is to not build the thing from scratch if you can avoid it. You know, save the labelers the trauma of having to look at all of these images by using pre-built models. You know, take advantage of the work that's already been done. And here are some examples of pre-built moderation models that are popular here at Clarify. The image moderation model recognizes drugs, explicit content, gore, safe, and suggestive content so that you don't have to. So these pre-built models are just ready to go right out of the box. You would plug them right there in the middle into your workflow, and they can tag your data, and there's really nothing fancy for you to do there, right? So, and we've got specific safe for work, hate symbol models, weapons models, text moderation models. And now what I'd like to do is now hand the floor over to Kirk, and we're going to take a look at how you can begin with these pre-built models. And then we're going to also take a look at what happens when you run up against corner cases, issues that are specific to your region or to your business, and you need to customize these models. And we're going to show you how you can train your own custom models, and then we're going to show you how to solve problems by combining existing pre-built models. And with that, I'd like to hand the screen over to Kirk to provide us with the demo.
Thank you very much, Jeff. All right, so let me go ahead and present my screen. And Jeff, if you can let me know when we can see my screen, since the viewers, that'd be great.
Yep, you're up. Here, I'm going to take this one down. There we go. Okay, take it away, Kirk.
All right. So for those of you who are not familiar with Clarifai, this is our community homepage. You can find it at clarifai.com/explore. And you can see here that we have image moderation as one of our featured models. It's one of our more popular functions that we provide and out of the box. So, you know, we also have several other types of models out there. You can go exploring for all types of things should you want to just kind of further investigate the platform. But when we go into image moderation, it's going to take us over to, excuse me, you know, this is kind of the default page for the moderation recognition model. And you can see here that we've got some default images that you can use, and it'll show you what it predicts the target item to be. We're going to keep the threshold down at 0, just so that you can see the full range of things as we go throughout the demo here today. And you can see that this is clearly identified this as drugs. The other categories that we have in this particular moderation recognition model are safe, suggestive, gore, and explicit. We're going to be focusing today on drug and safe, mostly because this is going to end up, preserved forever on the internet, and we just prefer not to have the other types of material out there for as long as it will be out there. And okay, so these 5 categories, they tend to work very well for many of our customers. You know, it's something that's out of the box, it's easy to implement, and it's sufficient for most of their uses. However, what we're going to cover today is a couple of use cases where you might need to extend our moderation model so that something that we consider to be safe is something that you might not want to have available in your content, and then conversely, something that we consider risky that you might want to allow into your system. The first thing that we're going to look at is I've uploaded this. You can go here and try your own image, and all I did was upload a vodka image, and you can see here that we consider that safe. That's the way that this model happened to be built. So if you're just relying strictly on this model, then that's going to be it's going to come out as a safe thing. Now, if you happen to be in the U.S. in one of the regions that has that is a dry county, as we call it, you may not want that on your available on your website. There are also several of our customers throughout the world that where alcohol is taboo, so they've done something very similar to what I'm going to show you as well. So the first step that we're going to do is we're going to construct our own model with our own custom image, with our own images that we've collected. So for doing that, you can see here that I have several images of different types of alcohol, different positions of alcohol, and I've gone ahead and labeled them all as alcohol. Then all I had to do was click on this button to create a new model, which I've done here, called alcohol not okay. And then that's just the specific type of model that I built. And then what I'll have to do is I'll go in and train the model. So when I go in and train that model, it's going to go out there and it's going to combine all of these so that the system starts to understand what alcohol is. And then once that model is finished training, we have the ability to add that to the moderation model. This is what you're looking at here is the model builder. And you can see that when an input comes in, it comes over and it gets, we do visual embedding and clustering. That's so that we can use those images for visual search. And it's not, while it's a very powerful function in the platform, it's not something we're going to be addressing today. Additionally, that input is sent over to our moderation visual classifier, which was the moderation, which was part of the moderation workflow to begin with. And then additionally, what we've done is we've added our second visual classifier called the alcohol not okay, res next. And in that, we only had one concept, so it was easy for us to just go ahead and select alcohol as that concept. And so now we have the ability to evaluate that. So once we've got that into the model, that then allows us to evaluate that image again. And here I'm just transitioning to a different portion of our platform. There's no best way to look at things. I just like to present from this one. It just makes things a little bit easier when I'm for this particular discussion. And here you can see that that model that I was just dealing with, called moderation plus alcohol, which is the one that I put up here. We've gone ahead and used that same image to go out there and get a prediction. And you can see that here we still consider it safe as far as our moderation model goes. But we now have this additional concept called alcohol that we now know about, and we are convinced that 100% that this is definitely alcohol. So we now have the ability to exclude that item from making it onto our sites or into our content. Now, an additional thing that we can look at is kind of the reverse of that. So if rather than wanting to add to our model, the moderation model, we may want to loosen up the standards a little bit. For instance, you can see here that what I've done here is I've uploaded, this is a cannabis plant, and you can see that this has definitely been identified as a drug in our moderation model. Now, there are several places across the planet where cannabis is either no longer illegal, or it has been decriminalized, or it's legal but it's not, or sorry, it's illegal but it's nobody enforces it. And so for that reason, you may want to allow cannabis to be seen on your platform. So for this aspect, what we're going to, for this perspective, what we're going to do is, rather than build our own model, we have what is known as, what you'll hear us talk about as the general model. It's actually a general vision transformer, which has over 9,000 concepts that we've already identified for you. Our labelers have gone in and taken care of things so that we understand what all of these concepts mean. We've been maintaining this model for over 9 years now. And you can see that we have identified cannabis as one of those concepts that we know about. That's going to mean that we can use this model to, excuse me, we can use this model to identify cannabis in an image rather than have to acquire our own images and train a model like we did for the alcohol side. So the way that we would handle that, again, we're back in the model builder, and all I've done to get to this point is copy the moderation model, which again gets us that embedding side that we talked about for using visual search, and our original moderation model. Now this time, what we're going to do is we're going to add the general classifier. Excuse me, the general image classifier over here, and we're going to then select concepts out of that model, so that we can then say, hey, we want to focus on this. So when we go in here and select that, we can identify cannabis. And since this is something that our moderation model is going to pick up anyway, we're going to want to make sure that we're going to want to make very sure that it's cannabis, because you don't want something to slip through. You wouldn't want heroin or anything like that to slip through on your cannabis model. So you want to make very sure. So we're going to say that if this is 90%, if the system is 90% sure that this is that this is actually cannabis, then we are going to say, okay, let this through our thresholder. Just click OK, and then we can update the workflow at that point, which then allows us to go ahead and look at that cannabis plant again. And we can see here that now we're using that moderation cannabis OK workflow. And it has definitely identified it as a drug, 100%. We see here again the embedder and cluster that we talked about for visual search. And then the next thing that it hits is the general model. This is that general vision transformer. And inside that general model, we've identified, okay, we can tell that this is a leaf. This is definitely flora. It's an outdoor photo. There's no person in the photo. And yes, there is cannabis in here. So, okay, we've seen this cannabis. That means we can throw it down to our concept thresholder. And as that comes out, we now know that this is cannabis and it's over 90%. So that means it's okay for us to present this, in our custom workflow, so that you can see this content on your site if that's appropriate for you. So like I said, so what we've done here today is we've taken our moderation model. We've shown you how to use it out of the box. We've shown you how to extend that in two ways, both by making it more restrictive as well as making it less restrictive, and how you can then incorporate that into your workflows to make it appropriate for your content and what you want to display. But Jeff, that's really all I had as far as what we wanted to discuss from a technical perspective today. Do we want to open it up for questions from those people who are attending today? I think you're still on mute.
Yes, please. Yeah, let's open it up. So we've got another 5 minutes or so here, guys. And if we can, please just dive in with any questions we can help answer. Let me also share an email that you can use to reach out for additional information. There we go. Oh, that ought to work. Okay. All right. Yeah, but we'd be happy to answer any additional questions there. And I hope that what Kirk was showing there was clear. Lots of pre-built models out there that can either solve your whole problem or get you started quickly. And either way, they're going to save you a lot of labor in terms of getting to a solution. And then you can custom train a model by providing more examples, more data. Or you can build a custom solution by combining existing models into a workflow. And he got into some of the details and the mechanics of how all of that works. But basically, we're looking at three different options that we're going to recommend as ways to efficiently get started on building content moderation solutions. So pre-built solutions, custom model building, and then creative use of existing models or custom and existing models and workflows.
Jeff, it looks like we've got a question out there from Yoram. If you want to take yourself off mute and ask it, or type it into the chat there, we'd be happy to help. Yoram, the floor is yours if you'd like.
Shipra, do you have a question that we can help you with?
Hey, I don't know if you already answered it, but I know you showed different models, right? That one model kind of detects drugs, suggestive, gore, and safe. The other one detects NSFW. The other one detects violence or weapons. Like, are those all separate models, or is it just one model that detects all these different categories? And can I combine different models if I want to use, let's say, output from two different models?
You can combine different models. Yep, and that is one of the strategies that we're recommending as a successful way to build these kind of solutions. So let me get that for a particular visual. Kirk can show you from his view as well. That's the Clarify community.
Sorry, yeah.
You can see models available there, but just for the sake of convenience, I'll just bring up the screen.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so this image moderation model, what Kirk was able to do in the demo was he was able to combine this image moderation model, with actually just the general model, the general purpose model, because that general model was able to recognize cannabis. And the image moderation model threw cannabis into the drug bucket. But in this example, we were saying, well, cannabis is not forbidden in certain parts of the world, so we would want to be able to create a mechanism to account for that fact regionally. And so what we did is you put both models in your workflow, and if an image is detected as a drug and it is detected as cannabis, then you approve that input.
Got it. And I can choose like how I combine the output of different models, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Clarify's workflow builder is just wonderful for this kind of thing, for sort of building this business logic and allowing for creative combination and recombination of AI models.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else? Any other questions out there?
Looks like Yoram's question is, I'm interested in image recognition AI that can identify fashion items. Can Clarify do that? I'm happy to take that.
Yeah.
Yes, we actually have an apparel model out there that is already pre-built out of the box. So you can just come out and immediately start using that. We have several customers doing that. We also give you the ability to expand that so that if you have certain types of apparel that you want to focus on, you can then extend our models to allow you to, excuse me, to allow you to focus in on what it is that you're specifically looking for. Does that help?
In apparel, this is exactly the type of project that Clarify also works with. There can be times when this becomes a moderation issue. There are different, conventions for what's acceptable in terms of clothing. Tank tops are not acceptable in certain parts of the world, for example. So at least within the content moderation context, we might recommend, if you were trying to moderate tank tops, In that kind of case, you might build a extend the moderation model by providing examples of images of tank tops, or using the apparel model if it already recognizes tank tops. I'm not sure what classes the apparel model has. It probably does, but either way, those type of things would be options. And then in terms of stepping away from content moderation, we work with loads of retailers in terms of building product recommenders based on visual similarity or classifications of images based on the clothing type. So I would reach out to us and we'll get you in touch with the right kind of people if you're looking at more retail applications and less of a content moderation application. Any other questions we can answer today? Certainly he needs a model to match the world standard. So I'm interested in fashion items. I'm not clear on what the definition of world standards are in this case.
That would definitely be something that we would that would be better served by us just taking that offline so that we can get into the details of it. Jeff?
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, perhaps we'll call that a day. Thank you so much for joining us for today's presentation. Again, for additional questions, just reach out at contact@clarifai.com and we'll get you routed through to the correct person right away. And thank